Hey guys, this is Calm. I'm with Fusion. We're doing an LMB commentary for World Chess Championship. This is game 8, as you can see by that kind of 8 thing on the board.
It's definitely an 8.
Definitely an 8, okay. Uh, I'm actually doing this commentary blind as I've just got back today. So, it's a
Did
little
you
bit of a change from normal. But,
lose your sight or something?
yeah. So actually you're going to have to say all the moves as we go. Cause,
It's a good thing I do that anyway,
yeah.
for our hard of sight viewers.
Who've managed to find our vid somewhat amazingly.
Yep, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, so, yep, round 8. What was your prediction? C4 for Carlsen.
Well, let's see. Carlsen won 2 games in a row. Then the last game, Anand was white, and he drew. So Anand has 2 whites left after this, and 3 blacks, including this. So he needs to. I'd say he needs to start pressing somewhat. And yeah, I think in terms of Carlsen, he can just play something very safe like he did in the opening game, some kind of reti or c4, and I think that would fit the result he needs, which is, simply draws at this stage, pretty well.
Okay, so, drum roll please.
What were you expecting?
Similar to you.
Okay.
E4.
e4, really? From Carlsen.
Yeah. And then Anand was like, what? I haven't prepared anything for E4.
Well, that's, he might have prepared something, but I imagine he'd have prepared it prior to the start of the match, which means maybe, I mean, it's like he'd wanted to draw as black originally, so he might even prepared like some Petrov or something, but of course he wouldn't want to play that now, because he wants to have the opportunity to play for more than a draw. So I guess that's kind of interesting. I guess I expect a Sicilian, but Anand doesn't really play many Sicilians, I remember.
So it's a very interesting choice from Magnus.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Anand does play Sicilians. I can't remember too many of his black games at the moment.
So he spent a little time thinking about what move he should play in response, and it comes out with E5.
E5. Okay. So we might have a Rai Lopez or something, but colours reversed.
So like 3, knight C6, and we get into our familiar Roy Lopez system that we've seen in the last few videos.
Yes, we've seen this in the last few games with Carlsen as white. Carlsen's black, rather. So it's kind of interesting that, well, I mean, there's so many systems you can play within the Rai Lopez that we kind of need to see Anand's next few moves to really determine what he's going for. Okay, knight f6 is kind of interesting, because now, obviously, we can get into the Berlin kind of systems, and they are known as, pretty drawy.
So he takes the pawn, rook E1, knight D6, knight takes A5.
Okay, so this is a bit different from how Carlsen played it as black, or Anand played it as white, because he took on c6 and then he, took on e5. Whereas this line we play rook e1 quickly. The idea is, I think, you drop your bishop back to f1 in lots of positions, so you keep the kind of 2 bishops, but obviously it's at the, the not doubling black's pawns kind of decision.
Yep, so take the knight, rook takes, and then castles.
Okay, so I guess the idea of taking on e5 was that he doesn't get his pawns doubled, and later on he's going to be able to play bishop f6 and kind of win a tempo on that rook.
Okay, so d4, bishop f6, rook comes back to e1,
Rook e8.
rook e8.
Okay.
Okay, it seems a little strange.
Yeah, I mean, You can contest the e-file, it's fine. I mean, his knight is kind of in the way on d6, so maybe he's thinking this is one way to get rid of that problem, because he can recapture with the knight. So that may be why he's doing it. I'm not particularly inspired by Black's play so far, as I think White can play this in a very kind of controlled, drawish manner. So we'll have to see what he comes up with.
So, what's your prediction from
In
this position?
Yeah. What is in terms of overall result or next move?
Result.
Well, here I'd say it would be a draw, but it's I don't know. Like c3 particularly, like that kind of move is just so solid. I think Anand has to really come up with something quite special to kind of push through, because White's not going to have any weaknesses, and you know, Black's general idea is to trade off pieces in this type of opening, because he's got less space. But then if he does that, that helps facilitate Carlsen's attempt at a draw. So that seems weird.
So the rooks get traded on e1, and now the knight comes to e8, trying to free up this d pawn.
Yep.
Bishop f4, d5.
Yeah, so with d5 instead of d6, it means that we can put our knight back on d6 if we want, to help control the c4 and e4 squares, which can be useful, but you do allow the bishop on f4 to have more scope. So that's kind of a personal preference thing. I think this is more aggressive, because we take more space, but we'll see.
So bishop d3 seems a natural square for that place to go, bishop to go.
Yep, that's good.
g6, try and blunt it a bit.
Yeah, I think White's plan here would just be like knight d2, knight f3, put something on e5, maybe h3 to allow bishop h2. Just very solid. You can play queen e2, rook e1, that kind of thing. And then you've just got control of the file, and there's no real weaknesses in this position. So it'll be interesting to see what Anand comes up with to try and play against that, because it's not so clear to me how Black should kind of position his pieces to play for an advantage.
Yeah, so knight d2 and then knight g7, fianchetting that knight.
Yeah, so I guess maybe he wants to come to f5 or something, or maybe knight h5 or something. If he can play knight h5 and trade off his knight for the bishop, that'll leave some kind of imbalance, and he'll have the two bishops. That could be some way to play for an advantage. Or maybe you want to play something like b6 and c5 to attack d4. You can potentially give yourself an isolated pawn on d5, but you'll get, you know, attacking compensation for it, in terms of opening up the centre and having more room for your pieces.
So queen e2 is kind of continuing with the plan you suggested.
Yeah, I mean, I suggested it, but it's pretty obvious where the pieces should go, I think. So it's
yeah, I mean, c6, rook e1,
bishop f5,
bishop f5, just helping because you're doing it blind. So I hope you've still got this in your memory. So Carlsen just decides to swap it off.
Yeah, you can do that. You could have played knight f3 as well. I mean, I think when you want the draw, you could even go for some line after knight takes, like bishop e5 to trade off the bishops, and then if the bishop drops back, you have the option of maneuvering the queen over to like f3 and h3 and to h6. So it kind of almost forces the trade of the bishops as well, and then the material's getting so low, and White does control of the e-file. You know, Anand would, I think, risk a lot by trying to push for a win, because he's going to have to move his pieces away from the centre, and that could potentially allow Carlsen to play for more.
Okay, so
so knight f3, normal move, yeah.
Knight g7 goes back. Guess he wants to put it somewhere else now.
Yeah, I guess e6 or h5. Yeah, okay.
Bishop e5. But the knight comes to e6. But as you quite correctly explicitly stated that bishop is going to come off anyway. So there it goes. Takes on f6. Now knight e5 jumps in, and this position's looking a little dry.
Yeah, there's just not enough material. I mean, maybe Carlsen can play for something with an idea of, knight g4 combined with queen e5 somehow. And then you have like knight f6 checks or knight h6 check kind of tricky moves. But in terms of black playing for something, it's hard to see what he can do. Maybe he just pushes the a pawn now, something like that. But then a5 can be met by a4, so it doesn't really gain much, it seems. Just doing this as well, moving the rook to the e file to oppose the queen, makes sense because it's the one open file.
Yeah. Of course, he goes knight g4, just attacking the queen.
Yeah.
The queen comes back.
Okay. I'm not sure about this. I might have preferred to play something like queen g7 to not allow the queen into e5. But then again, I guess queen e5 would pretty much force the trade of queens there. So I guess queen d8 is kind of a sign that black is still looking to play on if he can, but this looks kind of awkward to deal with. Okay, well, knight g7 is kind of a nice little tricky way to deal with it, actually, because now you have tricks where you can take on e8 a couple of times and play knight f6 check and you trade everything. Obviously that looks drawish though.
So what you're describing is this: takes on e8,
Yeah.
knight takes e8, rook takes e8, queen takes e8, knight f6 check. All the pieces come off the board. You've got 7 pawns on either side, no weaknesses.
No weaknesses, mirrored pawn structure.
Kings are pretty much similar spot.
Okay, but yeah.
f4.
Okay, this actually happened.
5, king f2, b5, b4, king f7, h3, h5, h6, h4, h5. And guess the result of this game.
Draw.
It's a draw. There's
Well,
no
that
way.
actually happened then.
That's the game. And that's it. GG.
Okay, that was a bit disappointing.
The whole game lasted 40 minutes. So when I woke up this morning,
So I guess Carlsen was playing pretty quick. He spent less than half an hour on that.
yeah, he spent like 30 seconds to move. It's like there's not really anything to think about, was there?
I think Vishy's opening is wrong again. Just kind of, I don't know. I guess he prepared it to play against white, assuming they'd be at an even score. Because obviously one of the options in game 1 is Magnus could have come straight out playing e4. But as it is, obviously he's got that advantage now, and Magnus hasn't been playing it, so I'm sure he won't have really maybe looked at another option for it, but I definitely think, right, I mean, e4, e5 isn't a bad opening, but the way he played it, the system he played, some kind of Berlin thing, is known to be quite drawish, if white wants it to be.
I mean, if this was game 1, then
Game 1, Vishy would be super happy
yeah,
to play this.
But we're in game 8, and he's 2 down.
Yeah, I think
Maybe he was just looking at his analysis from the right side and just tried to find a tricky line for white.
Yeah.
But clearly this wasn't it.
I feel like he should be playing the Sicilian or something like that against e4, just something where there's already an imbalance at the start because you've got an attack on the wing compared to a pawn in the centre. Just e4, e5 is too... I mean, look at this position. This is the end of the game, and it's almost exactly symmetrical. So, how do you prevent that happening? You prevent the symmetry early on, I think.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think he made a mistake in trying to do this kind of opening.
I don't know. I mean, maybe maybe he knows things we don't, but obviously they didn't actually happen.
I guess he's
in
just
this
putting
game.
all his eggs in one basket, and that's the white basket.
Yeah, but he's just had 2 whites and he got half a point out of them. So
Yep, and now he's got 2 whites left, and he needs to win them both.
I expect we're going to see d4 from him, because I think he's struggling against d4, e5. And I expect next time he's black, he's going to play a Sicilian or something of the sort, just not e4, e5. I think he should avoid e4, e5 with both colours. Because I think Magnus just has the advantage in both, it seems. Especially when he can just play for the draw and be the much happier out of the two to get it.
Okay, so quick game today.
Yep.
And it's a rest day tomorrow? Yeah. Guess so.
Yeah.
So we'll be back on Thursday for game 9, where we can see what Anand prepares for his next white side.
Yeah. At least he has this rest day to like really think about it. Think about his next white, whereas last time he was still kind of, pushed back a bit maybe from losing the previous game. So, hopefully he comes up with something good.
Alright, that's all from us this time. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks.